Thank you, Conference Convener, for the welcome address and detailing on conference. Now, it's my immense pleasure to introduce you all our keynote speaker, Dr. Asad Moshin. Dr. Asad Moshin is the currently convener and associate professor of tourism and hospitality management at the University of Waikato Management School. He has been in recent past chairman, Department of Marketing and Director of the Institute of Business Research, University of Waikato Management School. He has accumulated several years of industry and academic experience working in different countries in the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and Asia Pacific region, including Australia and New Zealand. His main research interests and publication are in the area of customer perception and contemporary trends toward holiday, human resource issues and challenges, and product and service quality assessment. I request Dr. Asad Moshin to start the session. Sir.
Thank you. I hope everyone can hear me. Yes?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
First of all, it's very nice to see some old faces, old friends, and some old colleagues once again. I must start by wishing everyone kia ora, namaste, and welcome to this presentation. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the people of IHM Raji that he's given me and the conference committee has given me the opportunity to speak to you. What I also note that it seems to be that quite generous with the time. How much time have I got, Bhupesh?
Yes, sir. Pardon me?
How much time have the say I can speak for 1 hour? That's is that correct?
We have 45 minutes.
Okay, yeah. So now, how will it work? Will you be operating my slides, or you want me to share the screen here? Or?
You share the screen because that is for the safety. If it doesn't work, then we will run from here.
Okay, let me start to share the screen. If it works, then we will know that yes, it is working. Sorry about all the, this is the new norm that we all are living in, and I'm actually a lot more used to using the Zoom meetings, and that a change of platform sometimes takes you time to understand. We probably should have done a demo, but that's all right. Come again, everyone. The topic which I have chosen today to speak to you, actually, it is a topic which has a lot of scope. It has a scope because this is also an area within the international hospitality management that many of us have not tried to use it, even despite the scope which exists in the area. Perhaps you are aware that even if you go just pre-pandemic until 2019 and early 2020, most of the results which were coming out from, especially nations like European countries or the Western nations or even many Asian countries, we find that there is a growing trend of people going for a vacation in 3 generations. So, and as a part of those 3 generations, you find that there are grandparents, parents, and grandkids who are going. So, especially in US, it was noticed back in 2019 that almost 8.5 million people took vacation in 3 generations within 6 months. Now, this trend is developing because it also adds to the social well-being of people. And why I say social well-being, because if you consider, you find that when 3 generations are going on a vacation, then normally what happens? During the vacation, you find the grandkids and the grandparents are very well connected. they enjoy the time together, and that gives the time to the young parents to have their own enjoyment or their own time. So in many ways, we find that, yes, and it is something global. We can't say that it is an outcome of one particular culture, but it is global, that the grandparents and grandkids tend to connect very well. And I don't know whether anyone has thought that, is there a reason for that? And if you start to think seriously, yes, there is a reason for that. And the reason is that they both have a common enemy. Now, you start to think that who is that common enemy for the grandparents and the grandkids? Now, looking at that, you find that it also becomes a challenge for international hotels, that how do they come up in near future, which can help them in order to cater the needs for all those three different generations which are going to be staying in their hotel vacations.
We are not able to see your next slide. Just that first slide is there on the screen. The slides are not changed.
I'm now going to the second slide.
Second slide is not with you. Only the introductory slide is there. The next slide, I hope that who am I, which is the next slide, but it has not come up.
Okay, now you can go to the second slide. Okay, so this is just starting up just to give you an indication that, well, what the old days can be. And can we go to the next one?
Next.
So this is exactly what I've been trying to do. My own aim has been, we start to look at the hospitality management profession globally, we find, yes, it has challenges, and the challenges continue to increase. And those challenges come up in different forms. It is not only the pandemic which has come as a challenge today, but besides the pandemic, hotels in most countries also face other challenges. For example, there are again three generations which are working together. You have a generation of baby boomers, millennials, and some Z generation, which again becomes a way that how do you deal in a work environment where so many different people with so many different characteristics within their generations are working together. That leads me to understand that, well, how do you really particular people within the industry who really need to have a hard head, but at the same time a soft heart? Because the hard head demands performance, and the soft heart continues to give you the service that you really expect from hotel managers. You go to the next. So Peter Drucker is a very famous person. And you find that this person has done a lot of work. And what he has been trying to say that it is important that any commitment that we make to resources, they should meet future expectations. And it is also we find that as the time has passed, that people have taken approach that they are very mindful of their responsibility to the environment, to the people today, and in time for people to come. Now, it is also expected that the world will continue to grow older. And during my journey pre-pandemic, when I was opportunity to spend about a year in different countries in Europe and in US, what was that insurance companies were advertising that we will look after you till you are 100 years. And there is an expectation that the age of the person or the lifespan of the person will increase. Maybe a few decades down the track, it may be quite common for us to know someone who is 95 years of age and is still in a reasonable condition to walk around. And this is going to become a challenge not only for the work places or just for hotels, but most of the other industries. Could we go to the next, please? The next. So this is just a photo to let you know that, well, there is no doubt whether it is India, whether it's Europe or anywhere else, in many places the world definitely aging. So I remember that even if we look at ourselves, we are not that young what we were 10 years ago, and it is going to continue to work in that direction. We could change the next slide, please. This gives an indication that what we can expect, and by 2050, and how that is expected to grow. So we are talking that even if you go until 2050, doesn't seem to be very far, we are talking almost over 2 billion people in that age group. Now, this is a huge market, and this market will become more and more significant. Many times this market becomes important because these people have two important things. And those two important things are time and money. And they are able to spend, on things that they have not done while they were young, or on things that they have sacrificed because they had been so much involved in doing so many things. Next slide, please. So let's look at the comparison. That what really is happening. If you look at pyramid A, very typical of developing countries, high death rate, high birth rate, and low life expectancy. Although in the developing countries, that is also changing. So even if you look at the average lifespan has expanded. Go back to 30, 40 years, it is much better now than what it used to be. And ultimately, whatever is happening today in the developed world, it will eventually travel to the developing world as well. But what we find that in the developed world, of course, there is a low death rate, there is a lower birth rate, and there is a longer life expectancy. So it is not far ago when someone thought that, well, if you think of a country like UK, if there was no immigration, what do you think how long it will take for the population of that country to double? And scientifically, they proved that it takes 450 years for the population of a country like UK to double, considering that there is no immigration, there is no other people. So just goes to show that what a slow birth rate is there in these countries. And as you go further into Europe, say, for example, Scandinavian countries, that there, for the population to double, it could take almost 700 years. And hence, there is an opportunity for especially developing countries to embark on those areas where they create futures for themselves and also for the people where they go and work for. Next slide, please. So this gives you information about Asia. Now, within Asia, we could see that most Asian countries will be in the second wave for aging societies. Japan has started, South Korea has started. And what we find that by the year 2050, there will be a reasonable number of people, especially from Japan, who will be in the 70 age group. And that trend is going to continue, whether it is in Singapore, Korea, Philippines, Malaysia, you name it. Even within India. But India is still lucky that we still have a good young population. Hence, there is a great opportunity for this country, India, just to embark on the new research ventures into trying to lead the world by taking up those areas for research which have not been touched by many other countries. And I see aging, serving the aging within the hotel management as a upcoming area for the Indians to continue to research into. There are also challenges which come with the aging. So, the next slide. And you find that, yes, I mean, in an age when if someone tells me to wear socks, I don't have to. Now, this probably Einstein said when he reached a particular age, but we can see that this could also be happening with our new generation, that we're only able to convey them to a certain extent that what they should be doing. And it's not necessarily, they may listen to you that what you want to say. So it's just an example, you know, I mean, in typical, I have seen within the environment of Australia, New Zealand, and some other European America, where I have spent quite a lot of time because my children live in America. So, and I find that my own grandkids and to some extent, a lot of other youngsters, when a kid is about 8 or 10 years of age, they tell the father that, well, Dad, you actually don't know much. And when the kid is at 12, 13, 14 years, will tell the father that I'm really sorry to tell you, but you still haven't learned anything. But by the time that 20-year-old kid reaches the age of, 24 or 25, the person tells the dad that, well, you have learned a lot in the last 10 years, but it's not actually the dad. It's actually the kid who has learned a lot in the last 10 years. And the things that you pick up with time and pick up with experience, usually it is difficult to have those captured or grasped by not having an experience and by not learning yourself. So, can we go to next slide, please? So, what are the other challenges? Aging population in developed countries poses a challenge because it's a challenge to the healthcare system. Now, just people may not have thought that, but if you really think about the medical tourism has been one area which really is starting to grow because of the expenses and because of the aging population. If the people are young in the West, they will easily be treated or they will easily be working and doing things. But it's the aging people who find it difficult to get the treatment, but they do have some money to spend. And hence people see that how medical tourism has, it's promoted in quite a number of Asian countries too. Marketing of tourism and hotels serve older consumers. This is again hindered, by preconceptions about the status of elderly in the society. It has been quite common in several cultures that it is expected the elderly will just stay at home or they will not be active, they'll be resting and they'll be doing nothing. And that trend is changing. If you look at the published research relating to tourism and hospitality for the aging, it's scarce in the Western world, and in the Asian countries or Asian regions, it is almost not existent. Can you go to the next slide, please? So the current scenario, image of aging is changing. And we find that in many countries, it is referred as gray power. It's great power because it's got money, it's got time. Modern medical technology has improved so much that it's helping people to live longer and work longer. So, for example, in New Zealand, we do not have a retirement age. You can work to the age that you want. In Australia, you can start to get some retirement benefit from the age of 72. That trend is slowly increasing globally. Different titles have been given to this segment, older, aging, and so on, retired, senior. at the end, it is a market which is growing. And we find the active lifestyle of elderly applies not only to their employment, but also to the consumption of different services. So you can see that the old age home, they're very expensive places, especially a good quality one. And people really need to save good money to be able to use those homes. This next slide, please. Aging consumption behavior. So I spoke about this earlier, that how almost 1 million households have gone on holidays. We find also aging consumers are more conservative. If someone was to ask me that what do you find a big difference between an older generation or the new generation today, I would say that probably the new generation today, these people are not brand loyal at all. So those students who are listening to this, if you can think about this, are you really brand loyal? Do all of you use only iPhone or Samsung? Or you look to use those phones which can give you an excellent experience and which can keep you engaged in different ways through the different gadgets that they provide. And we find that that is a trend. The young generation is looking more for experiences in different ways that keep them engaged. This is not the case with the older generation. The older generation demonstrates greater loyalty. And we find the younger generations, they want to shy away from any commitment. It is difficult. I mean, my personal opinion is that maybe within the next 30, 40 years, people may stop marrying because marriage becomes a long-term commitment. That commitment probably this growing generation may not be prepared to take on. So this just goes to show that how far we are running from the commitment and how far we could be moving from our own values in different ways. Next slide, please. What are the characteristics? So the youth audience and aging consumers, they are sensitive to the image and the status of goods, paying attention to real characteristics. This is important, even in these services. And sometimes a youngster may not, have a debate with you, argument with you about good or bad service. But if you catch an elderly person, that person can start giving you lessons about service. Can start to get a conversation with you that, well, how things should be done. So purchase of everyday goods and services, they create a sense of confidence and stability. Especially in developed countries, even as in aged people, you still want to live independent. You do not want to depend on your children. So even we find that aged people here, they do their own shopping. They live a very independent life, and that is a characteristics. They have their own hobbies, they create their own free time, and they have their own needs which continue to adapt themselves with. Slide, please. This is the time that they really start to, in other words, have a second honeymoon phase. In typical Western cultures, what we find that children, when they get to the age of 17, 18, they usually are encouraged to find their own way of living and earning money and spending. And most of the time, by the age of 18, 19, they usually will leave home. And in another 10 years, when the parents take a time and they find that, yes, they have got access to so many services and so much of time to relax. So it's like another important phase of their life. Slide, please. Some of the highlights that people tend to do jointly in different places. My own assessment is that all these things will travel to India too. Even our own cultures will start to adapt to those things. Next slide, please. What are the intercultural impacts that we were trying to find out. We find that effective marketing requires accommodating cultural differences. Now, these cultural differences could be in relation to age, they could be in relation to gender, they could be in relation to other norms that we have. Aging market is not homogeneous. It's a very heterogeneous market. And within the tourism and hospitality, you find so many simple things start to create an environment where people can start to see the difference between a good service and a bad service, an average service and an excellent service. So destination countries and cities, they have to consider to develop strategies to target travelers. Now, I think there is a link over here if you want to place a video. Otherwise, we could continue. To the end, yeah. There's a link that takes you to the video.
It is not.
Okay, if it doesn't work, then let's go to the next slide, which is why culture has an impact on services for the aging. So that is slide 17, I think. Slide 17. So, and next. Next slide. If we can't play the link, don't worry, then we can go to the next slide. I'm also the time. The next slide is adding that why culture has an impact on services for aging. So if we start to think about the cultural impact, what we find that it starts from something. Get to the next slide. Okay, so this is the one. So why culture has an impact on services for aging? You say you start to consider simple things. For example, a sense of self and space. What we tend to understand that we all have a sense of our own space. So, say in a typical Australian environment, I can hear some others. Okay, so in the environment of a space, say if I give you an example of Australia, you'll find that they are so mindful of the space that if you come closer than a meter to them, they, especially if you have two males, then they get worried about it, unless they know you for some reason or you're close friends. So now the second part, again, the communication and language. you start to think in terms of verbal and non-verbal exchanges, body language. And we find all these things, they tend to have an impact on the people, on the aging people. They take it more seriously than we would. Maybe those people are their mic then. Dress and appearance, typical or distinctive garments. And you find in many cases they dress in every sense what they want to be with the event for, whether it is relation to business or a religious occasion. Can we go to the next slide, please? So, future holds. This is, we have spoken a bit about it. We find that yes, the food and feeding habits, they will be having we find that the climate consciousness, they all tend to have an impact. The relationships, the values, belief and attitudes that we have, and all this tends to give people an opportunity to really get the sense that what they are looking for. Can we next slide, please? So, operators, whether we are in the marketing business or management, it is important that we start to think that just the way we do our marketing suffer from any sort of a cultural lag, and think about being at the destination, what the hotel and marketers should be doing it to understand the culture of consumers, and then the opportunities which exist for destination marketers and the opportunity that exists for cultural differences and promote synergies in the marketing process. Next slide, please. What future holds? This shows that an opportunity that how the market trends have changed and how they will be continuing to change. We find that the aging population is a new demographic challenge. This is the challenge for society to which tourism will have to respond with new types, new forms of activities. The main trend that how do you have 3 generations happening? How do you provide geriatric care at the same time activities for young children? How do you improve telecommunications and so on? Next slide, please. So this just a part that, well, what was happening in New Zealand many years ago. How do we increase the population? Should we let more people into New Zealand and have more babies? And you find the older people have more people into New Zealand instead of having more babies. The next slide, please. To a generational gap. What I mentioned earlier. The next slide, please. Yeah, this shows, I mentioned earlier that a challenge that exists currently amongst the hotels, and you can add one more generation to that, is the Z generation. How baby boomers, Gen X, and millennials are working. What are their pros and cons? So understand that generations are different. Their way of thinking is different. Their way of work ethics are different. I don't know if some of you may have mass resignation movement. Again, this is starting from America. And what you find that just in September 2021, there were 4.5 million resignations that organizations recorded in US. And not for any other reason, they just felt tired. They just didn't want to do that anymore. So the next slide, please. we find that yes, the modern rise will continue at every age. It will only get strengthened as we move further. And the next slide, please. Another example of romance. And in the end, thank you. At the last slide. Next slide, yes. So don't get all wired up getting older. Age is merely a number. The world has been enjoying us for a long time. And the next slide gives my references, and that's all I had today. Open to any question and answer if we have time. Last slide is question and answer. Okay, thank you all very much.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Okay, thank you. Professor Moshin, I'm not sure about the time here. Although I hope, good afternoon, Somsi. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the time here in New Zealand. I hope. Good afternoon, Somsi.
Okay.
All right. My question is, first of all, thank you for bringing to our knowledge the potential of the aging population, catering to the potential of the aging population for the presentation you have shared with us. But I have, now, I just want to know two things. One, that when you said that you gave an example that New Zealand, Australia, there is no retirement, age is a number, so there is no retirement, or everybody is, most of the people are, can work till they want. But how do you distinguish? What is your research study saying? How do you distinguish? Although it may vary from the country to country, but how long of what is the average age when you consider a person to be aging by the average international standards?
Right. My own observation is that in order to study consumer behavior and understand people that what their expectations are, we cannot have any comparative study unless we know that what do the people in particular country like, what are their characteristics. Once we have got of different countries, then we can have some sort of a comparative studies done to find out the commonalities and differences. I think from the Indian perspective, what is important that even if we don't think about going outside India, if you start to think about those people who are holidaying in India, the number of tourists, the domestic tourists, and look at that, classify that what age group they are, and look at the services that we normally provide to the tourists, and try to measure their views and perceptions about those services and products. That will give you an idea that how to compare with different age groups.
Well, the service expectations of an age bracket of 60 to 70 and 80 to 90 will be definitely different. So is there any study is there on the specific age bracket so that those research studies can be explored, can be used by the tourism fraternity?
So from the management perspective, being involved in editing different journals, I can tell you that I have not come across any substantial study which could be specifically focusing on the aging population and the services they require from luxury hotels.
Okay, okay, that is what I wanted to know. That is, there is still, you feel that there is still potential to explore into those areas in terms of research.
So there's a huge scope. Anyone who wants to initiate a research in this area.
Right. Just one more, because one, you have your proficiency on your study on the population. So it is for our knowledge. What are, as per your, your view, what are the countries who have actually, you think you just ranked 1, 2, 3, like 3 countries who you think they have exploited the tourism potential of this aging population, according to you, if you rate them in 1 to 3 or say, globally?
I did not the question.
I'm explaining. The point is, since we are ignorant about the larger map of global map of catering to the aging population, according to you, if you rate, say 3 or 4 countries who have actually you feel that catalyzed to exploit this potential of tourism for this aging population. If you rate, just name 3 countries or 4 countries in order for,
Yes. This is interesting. I have not come across any country or any study linked to international hotel management dealing with the characteristics of aging population, their requirement.
Okay, thank you so much.